Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive with us.
It's great to be here.
Today we're going to be taking a look at someone who really revolutionized Indian classical music.
Oh, yeah.
And really changed how we think about it even today.
Looking forward to this one.
Pandit Vishnu Digambar Puluskar. And, it's someone who we've all heard the name.
Absolutely.
But I think a lot of us maybe don't know the full details.
Yeah, we hear it all the time, but what did he actually do?
Exactly right. And we have a lot of great source material to go through today.
Really interesting stuff.
So I think we're going to learn a lot in this deep dive.
I think so, too.
So maybe to get started, for those of us who don't know, can you just give us a little background on who this guy was?
Yeah, absolutely. So Pandit Vishnu Digambar Puluskar was born in 1872.
Okay.
And he was a Hindustani classical musician, a vocalist.
Okay.
And he really kind of revolutionized a lot of what we know about Hindustani classical music today.
Now, was he born into a musical family?
That's a good question. His father was a kirtankar, so that's a devotional singer and a storyteller. But he actually lost his father quite young, so that's a bit of a tragedy in his life.
Oh, wow.
So, his musical journey didn't really start in the most, typical way.
Okay, so it wasn't a typical kind of family lineage thing that we might often see.
Not exactly. No.
Okay, and how did he become a musician then, if he wasn't...
Well, he did initially start training with a guru.
Okay.
In the traditional Guru Shishya Parampara, so that's a lineage.
Yeah.
But then, as I mentioned, his father died quite early in his life.
Right.
And he kind of became a wandering musician.
Oh, wow.
At a very young age. And that exposed him to a lot of different styles.
I see.
A lot of different approaches to music.
And this is all over India that he was going?
All over India, exactly.
Yeah.
And, really kind of shaped his own approach to music.
I guess that's one way to learn a lot, right? Is to just travel around and hear all these different people.
Exactly. Immerse yourself in the tradition. Yeah.
And see what's out there.
Right. And so then how does he kind of go from, this wandering musician to becoming such a huge figure?
Well, he was obviously very talented.
Yeah.
And as he was traveling, he started performing and gaining a reputation for himself.
I see.
People started to recognize his skill, his talent. And then one of the pivotal moments in his life was he met a scholar.
Okay.
Named Vishnu Narayan Bhatkhande.
Okay.
And Bhatkhande was working on a notation system for Hindustani music.
Wow, so this is something that didn't exist before.
Not in a systematic way, no.
Wow.
There were various forms of notation, but he was trying to create something very comprehensive.
Right.
And Puluskar was really inspired by this.
Okay.
He saw the potential in this notation system to really kind of democratize music education.
Now, why was that so important to him? Why democratize it?
That's a great question, and I think it goes back to his own background.
Okay.
He experienced firsthand the challenges of accessing musical training.
Especially outside of those traditional family lineages.
Yeah.
And he believed that music was a gift. It was something that should be available to everyone. And so he saw this notation system as a way to break down those barriers.
So it wasn't just about writing down the music. It was also about making it more accessible to people.
Exactly. Making it easier to learn, to teach, to share.
Right.
And really kind of opening up the world of Hindustani music to a much wider audience.
Interesting. So then how does he go about doing that?
Well, one of the key things that he did was he established a music school called the Gandharva Mahavidyalaya.
Oh, right. Yeah, I've heard of that.
And this was in 1901.
Okay.
And this school was revolutionary because it was open to everyone.
Wow. So not just people from, certain families or...
No. Anyone who wanted to learn Hindustani music was welcome. Regardless of their background, their caste, their gender, anything like that.
Was that controversial at the time?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
It challenged the existing power structures within the music community, but Puluskar was determined to make music accessible to all.
So he was a bit of a rebel in that way.
He was definitely a reformer.
Yeah.
He was someone who wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo and fight for what he believed in.
And so this notation system that his friend had created.
Yeah.
Did he incorporate that into the teaching at the school?
Absolutely. That was a key part of his curriculum.
Wow.
He believed that by using notations, students could learn more systematically.
Okay.
They could progress more quickly, and they could also preserve the music in a more accurate way.
Interesting. So it was almost like trying to standardize.
In a sense, yes.
Okay.
But, it's important to note that he wasn't trying to get rid of the Guru Shishya tradition entirely.
Okay.
He still valued that personal connection between guru and shishya,
Right.
but he saw notation as a tool
Oh.
to supplement that tradition and make it more effective.
It's almost like the best of both worlds. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, combining the traditional with the modern.
Okay, and so this school, it was based in Lahore.
Yes, initially.
Okay, but then eventually it moved.
Yeah, eventually he moved it to Mumbai.
Oh,
And today there are branches of the Gandharva Mahavidyalaya all over India.
wow. So he had quite a legacy then, I guess you could say.
Oh, absolutely. His
Yeah.
impact on Hindustani music is undeniable.
And how would you describe that impact? Like what are the main things that he changed?
Well, I think one of the key things is this idea of accessibility.
Okay.
You know, he made Hindustani music available to a much wider audience and really kind of democratized music education.
Right.
He also standardized a lot of the teaching methods and the repertoire,
I see.
which helped to preserve the tradition.
Yeah.
And, you know, he also emphasized the importance of bhakti, devotion in music,
Okay.
which I think is something that had kind of been lost a bit in the emphasis on technical virtuosity.
So before him, it was very much focused on just the technique.
It had become, you know, a lot of emphasis on that aspect,
Yeah.
and he wanted to bring back the emotional and the spiritual side of the music.
I see.
So, yeah, I think his impact is really multifaceted.
Wow. That's fascinating. And I'm curious too, because, you know, you mentioned that he was involved with this notation system.
Yeah.
And he was going around hearing all these different styles and musicians. Did he also, did he compose music himself?
He did, yes. He was a composer as well.
Okay.
And he also collected and transcribed a lot of traditional compositions.
Oh, wow. So he was really trying to document.
He was very much about documentation and preservation.
Okay.
You know, he understood that the oral tradition was vulnerable.
Yeah.
So he wanted to make sure that this music was written down and preserved for future generations.
And did his music, does it have kind of a specific style, or is it?
You know, it's interesting because his music reflects his own journey. You know, you can hear the influences of the different gharanas that he studied with.
Gharanas.
So those are the different schools or styles of Hindustani music.
Okay.
And so his music is kind of a synthesis of all of that.
Oh, wow.
But it also has its own unique touch, you know?
I see.
It's very melodic, it's very expressive, and it's also very accessible. It's the kind of music that anyone can enjoy.
That's great. And do we know much about his personal life, or was he?
Well, you know, as you can imagine, he was very dedicated to his music.
Yeah.
It was really his life's work. But he also had a family.
Okay.
He was married and had children.
And did they also become musicians, or?
Some of them did, yes.
Okay.
They continued his legacy.
So it really became a family affair then?
In a sense, yes.
Okay.
But, you know, it's interesting because even though he came from a musical background,
Yeah.
he really kind of broke free from those traditional structures.
Right.
And forged his own path.
That's amazing. And so what would you say his legacy is today? Well, we've talked about a lot of the things that he did,
Yeah.
but how do people remember him?
Well, I think he's remembered as a visionary.
Okay.
You know, someone who really transformed Hindustani music
Right.
and made it what it is today.
Okay.
And, you know, his influence is still felt very strongly,
Yeah.
not just in India, but all over the world. There are so many musicians who have been inspired by him and who continue to carry on his legacy.
And his music is still performed and studied?
Absolutely.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, he's a true icon of Hindustani music.
And it's amazing that, you know, he accomplished all of this in just, you know, a few decades.
It's incredible when
Yeah.
you think about the scope of his work. It's
Yeah.
really remarkable.
It really is. And it's, you know, I think it's something that we can all learn from.
Absolutely.
This idea of, you know, taking something traditional and making it accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
Without, you know, losing the essence of it.
Exactly. You know, finding that balance between tradition and innovation.
That's a great point.
I think that's really the key to his success.
Yeah. Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive.
I agree.
You know, I think I learned a lot about Pandit Vishnu Digambar Palaskar, and I think our listeners did too.
I hope so.
So thank you so much for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Looking forward to it.
Take care.
You too. Bye.